Hello there. Welcome back to Jennie Designs with Paper. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel today. I'm working on an interactive Christmas card for you. So get comfy and let's get crafty. Now, it has been a minute since I made a pop-up box card, so I thought I would take these mama elephant images that I colored sometime in the last couple weeks for one of my crime and coloring videos and turn them into a pop-up box card. I also have some sparkly paper, some pattern papers from this Michael's 6x6 Christmas pad that I picked up this week for free because I had a coupon. Actually, I had a rewards certificate. I have some dynamics from My Favorite Things. I have some white cardstock and a sheet of 8.5 by 11 inch blue cardstock. To create the card base, I am going to take, excuse me, allergies are real here. I am going to take this piece of cardstock and cut it in half so that it is 8.5 by 5.5 inches. And with the 8.5 inch side up, I am going to score this cardstock at 2, 4, 6, and 8 inches. That will create 4 columns that are 2 inches wide, plus 1 column that is only half an inch wide. After I have all of these score marks created, I will then flip the cardstock so that the 5.5 inch side is along the top, and I will make a single score line. Now, I prefer to make mine not exactly in half, but so instead of going like 2 3/4 or whatever, I go 3 inches. I like my top flaps to be slightly smaller than the bottom flaps when I make my box cards. The next step is to do a little bit of paper trimming. So I am going to take some sharp scissors. You could use a paper trimmer to do this. I have using scissors today. And the first thing I'm going to do is cut this little flap off the side. Now, I am holding it upside down. I'm actually cutting the top or the shorter edge of that little skinny end off. And then I'm going to take this cardstock and flip it upside down so that my shorter rectangle is in my hand. I did flip it over so that I could have the depressed part of the score line facing up so I could get the scissors kind of in the middle of that. And I am cutting down all 3 of those remaining score lines. This creates the little box flaps on my box card. Once I have those trimmed down, I am going to go ahead and reinforce those folds. And I will start by folding over that little flap that is left. This is the flap that will adhere our box together. And then I will fold all of the flaps on the long score lines. I am taking it slow and making sure the bottom edge lines up nice and straight so that I get straight fold lines, score lines. There we go, score lines on my box. The next thing I need to do is fold the flaps down. However, the flap on the opposite side of the short edge, I don't fold down. That will be the back. So I'm not going to fold that down at that midway. It's not really half, but the midway score line. And I'm just going to fold each of those 3 flaps down and line them up with the score lines. Doing the best to keep them straight. I did get them a little bit off, which presented a bit of an issue at the end, but nothing too dramatic, nothing I couldn't repair or work around. So this is how our box will look when it is created. Now, some people adhere that little flap to the inside of that long piece. I prefer to do it on the back. One thing I need to do is remove that score line. Now, I forget every single time not to take that score line all the way down to stop, but it's really easy to fix. You just take a bone folder and push that score line back out, and by the time you do that and then add the decorator, the pattern paper to it, you can't see it anymore. So the next thing I'm going to be cutting is this sparkly paper. This is kind of a textured opalescence pattern paper that's been in my stash forever and ever. I'm not even kidding you, probably 9 years or so. Yeah, a long time. And I am cutting it into 1 inch, 1 1/4 inch pieces of paper. Doesn't matter really the width of them at this point. The length, however, so I cut them at 3 inches. and then only scored the ends at 1/4 inch on each end. If I'm going to cut them at 3 inches, they needed to be scored at 1/2 inch. I fix it later, and I don't make you watch it. Don't worry. Okay, I am taking these dynamics from My Favorite Things, and these are the slopes dynamics from their interactive card dynamic set. And I am going to take all 5 or 6 of these little pieces of sparkly paper and cut them with these dies to create some snowdrifts. Now, I will use only these 2 dies on all of the pieces of paper, and I will just change the positioning of the die to get some variation in how my snow is stacking up. I am adhering the dies down to the very top of those strips of paper with some very low tack tape. This is from Spellbinders, and I put it in a little tape dispenser that I got for like $1 on Amazon, or $1.50 or something like that. And I'm going to go ahead and run all of these through my die cut machine. And once I have them all cut out, I need to score the ends. And this is what I was talking about. You need to score them so that they can fold to create the inserts for your box card. My box is only 2 inches wide, and I cut a 3-inch strip, and I only scored them at 1/4 inch from each end, which means they are, like 1/2 inch too long. I should have scored them at 1/2 inch. I fixed that off camera once I realized what I had done. But anyway, I am scoring them all at the same time. And now I'm going to go ahead and fold them down and burnish that score line, burnish that fold. I keep losing my words tonight. Burnish that fold with my bone folder. I know you're super surprised that I get tripped up on my words because, words are hard, and English is my first and only language, and I do not have a very capable vocabulary most of the time. Okay, back to the card. I am folding down each of the flaps on the ends of those little pieces of sparkly paper that will create the snow drifts for my box card. Once I have those all scored and fold, I will push them out of the way and cut down the paper, the pattern paper, for the flaps on my card, on my box. So the back of the box, I don't fold that down. I leave that standing up, and I put some pattern paper on those little box flaps that you see when you open the card, when the card pops down. And they are 2 inches wide by like 2.5 inches tall. So I need to cut this pattern paper about 1 7/8 inches wide by about 2 1/4 or 2 3/8 inches tall. I want it to have just the most tiniest of border. So I'm using this pattern paper. Again, this is from a Michaels 6x6 pattern paper pad that I picked up just this last week. And I am not going to make you watch me cut all 4 of those pieces of paper because, that's a little bit extra. Once I have them all trimmed out, I did lay them down to make sure they fit. And the long piece is going to be 5.5 inches because it is the height of a card, and it is going to be 2 inches wide. So I'm going to cut this snowflake pattern paper to be just smaller than that by about 1/8 or maybe even 1/4 inch. I usually go for 1/8. Sometimes I go for 1/4 because it folds better. I start, though, with it just being 1/8 of an inch smaller because, I can always trim it down, but I can't add it back. And the next thing I need to do is take a piece of white cardstock and cut it to the same size, about 1 7/8 inches wide and 5 3/8 inches tall. And I will put this on the very back of the box so that I have a place to write a cute little Christmas note. Okay. One thing I wanted to do today is round the corners of my pattern paper before I adhere them to the box flaps. So I have pulled out my crocodile corner rounder, and I am using the 1/4 inch side on all 4 corners of all 4 pieces of pattern paper. That was a lot of 4s in that sentence. Wowzer. Okay, I am going to be using my ATG gun to adhere these. They're not going to move. These are not moving parts of the card, so it is okay to use a regular double-sided adhesive. Although I do find that the adhesive in my ATG gun, once it has been burnished down and has had a minute to cure or to set, it really is a really strong adhesive. I do appreciate it that it gives me a little bit of wiggle room or correction room. Like if I'm careful, I can pull things off and rearrange them without doing too much damage to the paper behind it. So the flaps are decorated on the part that you see when it opens up. The back, the long piece, is going to go all the way down the inside of the front of the card on the same side, if that makes sense at all. So you will see those snowflakes as you're looking at the front of the card once it's all decorated with our little critters. And the next thing I am going to do is start adding my snow banks into the box card. I like to do one side before I assemble it, before I completely close the box, just because it's easy to see that way. It is a little bit tricky to get them all lined up and closed and the box closed, but I feel like it's worth it because it's such a cute card. So this is one item in your card that you really need to use a super strong adhesive. So I will be using this Suquane tape. I've pulled out my 1/4-inch piece or 1/4-inch wide roll, but then I changed to my 1/8-inch roll because it's just a little bit smaller, so a little easier to use. And I have one piece of tape on each of the ends of those snowbanks. And I am going to burnish that tape down so that when I remove the backing paper, the tape stays in place. Because this is a textured and a little bit shiny, I need to make sure that tape is really stuck down. Now I'm going to position this first snowbank right against the fold on that box card. I don't want to go over the score line or over the fold line, but I want to go right up next to it. And then each one of these next snowbanks will just butt up right against the snowbank in front of it. Now, one thing I will say, that the little legs, the parts that are being taped down to the inside of my box, if they were 1/2 inch wide instead of a 1/4 inch wide, I would not be able to get as many in because of the way I'm assembling them, right? I'm putting them right up next to each other. So the bigger that little foot is that you adhere the pieces, the inserts to your box card, the fewer you're going to get in. Okay, so here comes the tricky part. I have removed the adhesive off the other end of those snowbanks. And then I'm going to put adhesive on the flap that holds my card together. And again, I'm using that really strong adhesive. And I'm kind of moving the inserts out of the way. And I'm lining up this back piece and kind of sort of pushing it down with my bone folder. I didn't rub it too hard until I had all of these inserts in place. And each time I put one of those inserts in place, I am burnishing it with the edge of my bone folder so that it's good and adhered. And there is a little bit room in there for me to put one more piece in. So I went ahead and did that off camera. They're not necessarily lined up perfectly straight. And I think that's partly because they were varying widths, from top to bottom. Not a big deal. So now I have folded this card flap and I am re-burnishing those edges. And this is how it will fit into a folder. It does take a minute, and I tore my cardstock there because I was not gentle, but it does take a minute to get them folded down flat and burnished. You will not see the tear in that cardstock because I have a magic hide for that too. So here is the piece of white cardstock I'm going to put on the back to cover that flap, but also so I have somewhere to write a sweet little note. It won't be something that's necessarily particularly personal or private because it will be, excuse me, visible to anybody who looks at it. But now you won't really be able to tell that I tore that cardstock because I was being a little too quick and a little impatient. Okay, so now we have our box decorated and our snowbanks in, and it's time to insert all of our pieces. So this stamp set has a variety of animals and a street lamp, and this little bunny is holding a lamp as well. But when I cut it, it was a little bit flimsy when I fussy cut it out. I did not leave any edge to the outside of these critters because I didn't want to. So I decided to take the bunny and stick him right down to the back of the box because the little lamp he's holding is so fragile. The rest of the critters, I am taking this really strong adhesive and putting it right along their feet. So basically their feet are going to be buried in the snow. There are a dozen different ways that you can attach the pieces that you put in your box cards. I have sometimes put a piece of clear, strong, thick acetate behind them and had them kind of dancing on top of the inserts. I have used cardstock that mirrors or matches the same color that I'm using to make the card itself. But this time I decided that they could be standing in or behind some snowdrifts while they are singing. These two little foxes that are kind of hugging, I did put them down a little bit farther because they were very tall. So I put the tape a little bit on their lower bellies. It is a little bit finicky, but it's fun to work with. So the thing I'm missing now is a sentiment, and I have these Simon Says Stamp Christmas greeting strips from last year that I never used them all because I didn't. So I am going to pull up this piece that I've already cut apart, and the one on the bottom here that says have a bright and happy Christmas I think is kind of perfect because of the lantern and the street light that are in this stamp set. So I am going to pull out my Simon Says Stamp label dies and trim out this sentiment. So I'm going to go ahead and run that through my die cut machine, and once it has been cut with the label, I'm going to trim off the ends, and then I'm going to go around the edges with a black Sharpie marker. This is toner printed, meaning it's white cardstock and the black is the toner, and the white edge is a little bit out of place. So I am going to just go ahead and cover up those white edges so that you cannot see the white core of the cardstock, and it looks more finished and polished, I think. And then I'm looking at this, and that part that says have a bright and is a little bit too long, so I just trimmed off the word and, so it will have a 3-line sentiment. I am going to go ahead with my 1/4 inch adhesive and add that to the back of my sentiment strip. I will burnish that and then peel the release paper off or the backing paper off. And then I will pick them up with my reverse clamp tweezers and adhere that to the front of my card. And when I was all done with this, I found the little penguin. I was like, I feel like I'm missing a critter. And sure enough, I was. So I found the little penguin. I put a little piece of tape across the bottom of his little feet there and adhered him to the inside of the card as well. I for the life of me, couldn't figure out what I was missing. Yeah, he was buried underneath all the scraps. It's lucky he didn't get thrown away. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit off camera there. I wasn't really paying attention because I was so excited to have found the penguin again. Okay, so here is the box all finished. I'm going to try and get a couple of shots of the front view so you can see how all those critters look like they're standing there caroling together. Here is a zoomed in front version or front picture of the box card. The black bear is a little hard to see, but whatever. He's cute and he's there. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel. I have a couple of other videos here I think you might like, as well as a subscribe button. If you have not yet subscribed to my channel, I would love it if you did. Leave me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, and have a really great day.